Welcome back to Life Unfiltered. Today's episode features Samantha Cohen. Sammi is a digital creator who creates content at the intersection of business and pop culture. She received her MBA from UC Berkeley and currently works in marketing in big tech. Sammi, or as some may know her as Samantha Cohen Talks on Instagram and TikTok, is passionate about advocating for women in business across all stages of their careers. She's well known for her deep dives on founders and businesses to keep her followers up to date on the latest market insights. She also has a weekly newsletter that covers the latest news and insights across business, entertainment, and career. Sammi's been featured in publications such as Forbes and BuzzFeed. Enjoy. Stop before you do the 15-second fast forward to get through this ad. Today's sponsor is near and dear to my heart, Salika.com. I'm dear friends with the owners, and I love their clothing. Salika is a female-owned and operated clothing line designed for the discerning woman who wants to look great but feel comfortable. Salika is manufactured right here, locally in Los Angeles, boasting superior fabrics for total livability and real life. My favorite thing about Salika, and I have several of their pieces, is that it's designed for being chic and comfortable, but with complete versatility to transition from day to night. It's made with natural soft fabrics and for all women, super size inclusive from extra small to 3X. Effortless, easy, elevated clothes that you will reach for again and again. I live in my sweatshirts, and Salika and I actually collaborated on the Vive waffle top after they saw me using it as my travel top time and time again. We go way back. I adore them. It would mean the world to me if you would support them. Listeners can use LLG10 to save 10% off of your order, whether a longtime loyal customer or new to the brand. Visit Salika.com to find out more. Sammi, thank you so much for coming in today. I've been watching you on the socials, on all the socials. I'm so intrigued by your work. I was I want to talk to her. I want to hear all about, I have so many questions for you, but I find your content so interesting, so fresh, so engaging, and in a world where where content is so catered to how to look good and, girls, how to go from day to night, you doing the content that you do, especially it seems geared really toward women. I love it. And I'm so I'm happy that you could be here today. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I am also so excited to be here. And I was mentioning this earlier that I was listening to your podcast as I was driving from Santa Monica. And I also just want to call out how impressed I am with you and your content, with your authenticity. And it's so clear that you've built such an engaged and bought in audience, which is so hard to do. And actually that's something that I really look up to you about.
Well, we're going to talk about that today, actually.
Yeah, we'll get into everything. But
I love a fangirl start. So let's jump right in. Your tagline is sort of you're at this intersection of pop culture and business. Can you tell us a little bit more what that means?
Yeah. So for me, I have a more traditional business background. I got my MBA from UC Berkeley, and I often in my day job wear a very analytical logistics hat. That's my on paper, my background.
Okay.
But at heart, what I'm passionate about is entertainment, social media, pop culture. And I saw this big gap in the market of people who were delivering content at that intersection that weren't part of these larger media companies like E! News or even Demois. So I wanted to bring this educational aspect to pop culture, entertainment, media in a fresh way. And so honestly, all of my content is just what I personally would be researching late at night, when I'm sitting on the couch at home. And I feel because of my passion for it, it genuinely does not seem like work. It's just fun.
And it genuinely doesn't seem like you're filming content in that way. You could tell that you're interested in what you're talking about. That energy comes through. I think that comes back to the authenticity aspect. It's you could tell when someone's posting content because they have to promote something, or you could tell when someone's really engaged in what they're doing. Social media, I feel makes it even more obvious when someone's into what they're doing or not. I don't know why that is, but you could just really get a sense.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. Yeah.
Can you give us a little background? Give us a little bit of background, where you started, give us a little journey. Take us on a little journey from I guess graduate school onward.
Okay. So I started graduate school in 2018.
Okay.
And I went into grad school and I did a full-time MBA program. You're there for 2 years. You don't work. You're fully engaged as a student. And I thought, okay, these are 2 years that I have to kind of like test out whatever I want to do for like the rest of my career, even though we know like people change their careers trillions of times. And truthfully, like business school is, in my mind, like the best way to use it is like an experimental ground to figure out what you want to do next.
I never been to business school. I've always been interested in it. But like, did you have a good experience?
I loved it. Okay. I loved it. But I always tell people who are potentially interested in going, who are scoping it out, that it's really important to be super intentional about why you want to go.
Okay.
And there are plenty of people where it doesn't make as much sense to go, where if they're already working in their career that they want to be in after, an MBA is probably not going to be of as much help as if you're switching industries. For me, I had worked at this German grocery chain called Aldi in like operations. Yes. It's funny because a lot of people in the US like still don't know it.
My partner like imports European food.
Oh,
so
okay.
Aldi is at the top of our chain.
Okay, yeah. So worked at Aldi, and I just knew 2 years in, I was like, this ain't for me. Okay. And so I was really interested in learning more about like the broader state of business, and I wanted to try and test out a lot of things, but I also had this entrepreneurial bug. So for me, I was like, business school is a great opportunity for me to pivot into a new industry. And while I'm doing that, I can try my hand at this whole entrepreneurship founder thing. And so because I came from this food business background at Aldi, I decided to come up with this new company. It was this idea for a matcha business. Essentially, instead of using matcha powder, I wanted to take matcha powder and turn it into a concentrate so that it could be used at like cafes and restaurants.
Also.
And yes. So it was a very specific target customer where you're not going to have like the third wave coffee shops per se who are using it because they're going to do the whisking and like enjoy the artisanal process, which honestly, I use that process at home. So no
but
hate in that game.
But home is very different than say like a busy cafe.
Exactly. I was thinking more like Paneras of the world where it's like you still have customers who are going to order it, but they don't care as much about the artisanal process.
Yeah.
So that was my customer. I was living in Berkeley while I was in business school. I was literally like a one-woman show.
How
with
does,
a food scientist.
only because they just came from Japan, how does the concentrate perform compared against a powder?
It's different because there was no way to truly create the concentrate in which it's 100% submerged in the water.
Got it.
So at the end of the day, you were still going to have the bottle that had like a little bit of sediment at the bottom. So it wasn't like 100% concentrate, but it did do the job of making it easier for cafes and restaurants. And so it essentially like fulfilled what I was looking for.
Okay.
And I was able to get a bunch of customers, like literally just by like knocking on doors and like me driving around in my car as a business school student.
I love that,
and
though.
Finding a production facility and all of that. And I planned to scale that after business school. Then 2020 came around. I was graduating that May. The pandemic happened. And from February to March, in the span of 1 month, I lost all of my customers. By lost, I mean everyone paused their business because restaurants were literally closed down.
Yeah.
And so I went
And I want to say probably the to-go matcha was like really put on pause during the pandemic.
Everyone. Like Amazon sales for matcha, I'm sure like went through the roof because everyone was just doing it at home. But at the time I was like, I have to really figure out what I'm going to do next because this was my plan for after school. So I started just recruiting for like your traditional like big tech jobs and ended up in big tech where I am today. And now my focus is more so on logistics and marketing. That's kind of where I sit within my current role. And I'd say in around 2022, so it was 2 years into me working this big tech job. As I mentioned, it was really analytical. It was very just businessy in every sense of the word. I felt this huge lack in my life, and that lack was around any creativity. I felt this like really burning desire to put something creative out into the world because I wasn't really getting that in my day job.
Yeah.
And I decided to just start with a TikTok video. And I was terrified to put my first video out there. But that's the thing about TikTok versus Instagram.
Yeah.
It was very intentional because TikTok the way that the algorithm works, like it puts out your content into the ether and like strangers are going to be seeing it versus Instagram, where it's like your close community, your family, your friends.
But also TikTok, you don't have to have that perfect aspect.
Exactly.
And in that way, TikTok is really superior. That takes away a lot of the pressure that I think Instagram gives with like how you have to perform or show up in that way. So I get why you would.
But I do think, and we can get into this later, I do think Instagram is changing that way. It seems like we're already seeing with Reels. Reels is essentially just like, for lack of better words, copying what TikTok did.
Yeah.
And I think people now really want to consume content that's just more unedited, raw, real. So anyway, I found myself just in my like off time after work, like putting these videos out that were very like much more on the pop culture side than business. But I'm like, let's try this.
I would start with TikTok too. That was smart.
Because I want to
bait them in with the pop culture and then hit them with the business.
Yes. And it was one of those stories where I did a video on Tracy Romulus, who's like one of the people in like the Kardashian sphere. She works really closely with Kim on Skims. And anyway, I did like a close up on her. And I remember I filmed it. I went to bed that night.
Oh, Tracy was like always with her on the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she's on the show. She's like best friends with Kim still. And I posted it that night. I wake up in the morning and it has over 1 million views.
Oh my God.
And like overnight, I gained, it wasn't crazy, but like 5,000 followers. And I was
That's
like,
amazing.
I was like, whoa.
I should get on TikTok.
TikTok, I mean, TikTok is its own beast. But I'd say, I mean, I think you would crush it on TikTok.
I just can't do it. I don't know why. My spirit's fighting it. My spirit's fighting it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was, so you did the pandemic, that traditional pandemic. I'm taking to the, that was one of my questions. Like, what propelled you?
Yeah.
Because there's always, for people that are not like traditional Instagram or TikTok girlies, when they show up online, I'm like, what brought you there?
Yes.
There was a catalyst.
There's always a moment.
Because to take to the internet's a big deal.
Oh,
what were you
terrifying.
scared about?
Oh my gosh, what wasn't I scared about? I think for me, because I am like a classic millennial. I grew up on Instagram, not TikTok, versus Gen Z, which is like very comfortable on TikTok. So I felt like I needed to show up with this really polished view, and like my hair and makeup needed to be perfect. I needed to have like all of these cuts and pre-script everything out. And looking back on my early videos, the level of cringe that I feel, it's like, oh, girl, what were you thinking?
But are you even living if you don't look back at your content and cringe?
No.
I actually did a sweep on a lot of my early content because I was like, what were you doing? I think you're not supposed to. I think you're supposed to leave it and like watch yourself grow and evolve. But
and you're like, delete.
But also, I deleted so much. But also in 2020, times I feel like we're moving so quickly. 4 years ago, content seems cringe, but 4 years ago, it probably was not cringe.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet you didn't
here's
put
the
out
thing.
cringe content.
Here's the thing. And I 100% am going to validate that because people were watching my early content. And it has like, honestly, a lot of my content that I posted then that was like very pop culture centric has more views than some of the videos I put out now.
Yeah.
But, and it did well. It just, to me, seems really cringe because I think I look at myself and the version of myself as someone who is just really concerned about coming across as this really polished, over-edited version of myself. And don't get me wrong, like I still majorly have those insecurities about how I show up online. But I think it was very obvious to me that that was like a huge concern.
Yeah.
So, I
like the casual. You do it very casually now.
I'm trying to, but I'm also, I think I'm realizing that first, I think it lands better with people.
I think so.
Because people just want to see like more of a stream of consciousness more than someone who's like in a perfectly lit, I mean, lighting is always important, but like they just want to feel like they're in it with you.
Agree.
Versus you on this like pedestal.
Yes.
So
that was the first thing I noticed about your content. I was like, this feels very casual to me. It doesn't feel like information's being shoved down my throat. You know, it's difficult to give over certain, like, marketing and business is not an easy thing to kind of take to the internet with, as you found out. Like, your pop culture stuff does so much better. I think that's also, there's work for us to do. Like, I think women could do a little bit better with absorbing and demanding and wanting that sort of content. I think, you know, but I really think when you're bringing kind of more serious subject matter or stuff that's not fluffy or poppy or what's Kim Kardashian wearing, it's, you have to have a really good way of delivering it. And I think you nail it. And also you do it fast.
Yeah.
Fast, punchy, and chill.
I mean, that's what the people want.
That's what they want. So let me ask you, how do you decide what you're going to be posting about? Like, how do you figure out what you care about?
Ooh, yeah, that's a really good question. So I have this running list of items in the notes app of my phone, and it probably, if I were to count the number of items in there, like hundreds. And it's something I get sources and inspiration from everything in my life. So just to name a few though, I listen to podcasts that are more businessy, but podcasts that just provide me with like daily news and information.
What do you listen to?
Oh my gosh, I listen to The Journal, which is the podcast by Wall Street Journal.
Yeah,
I listen to All In, which is obviously a really big business podcast. Pivot with Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher.
Okay,
so it's more
Scott
like
Galloway.
Almost like a mix of Scott's the best.
He's the best.
The best.
Yeah.
I love this.
I'm going to start listening to that one.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So you're a big podcaster.
Yep. Podcaster, newsletters, and newsletters that are in similar fields of like this intersection of entertainment, media, business, just all across the board. And then I'd say conversations with friends. So I have those go-to friends that I talk to who also work in different spaces than me, but we all have like a similar interest in like knowing what's up and coming, like what's going on, what people are talking about. And so all the time I'll get texts from those friends saying like, oh my gosh, I just heard about this. Like you need to look into this. So like I have a separate section of like stuff that my friends say. Yeah.
Your friends are looking out.
They are.
They say the most terrifying thing like you could find of a woman's like her notes app.
Do you really believe that to be true? Yeah, that's me.
I could just imagine you feverishly typing in your notes app at like 1 a.m. Like
like I'll be with my husband and we'll just be like out in LA somewhere and like we'll be talking about something else and then I'll just be like, hold on. And I'll just be writing it down. He's like, that's for
I do the
media,
same
right?
thing for ideas. Okay, I literally skipped so far ahead for that. Okay, also want to know, what do you think is going to be happening with TikTok?
Well, I think, and this is actually something that Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher have talked a lot about on their podcast, I don't think that TikTok is going to get banned. I think that there's going to be some compromise or solution that the U.S. government is able to make with ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, or there may be a company within the U.S. that actually decides to purchase them. But I don't see a world in which ByteDance is willing to walk away from the U.S. market.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, I just think, and first, it's going to get drawn out.
So what do you think the whole thing is? Do you think there's a real legitimate security issue? What about the rumors that? I love this. I'm giving you the really hard-hitting question. Yeah. Okay, let's put the security issue, put a pin in that, and let it hang here for a second. Did you hear that rumor? I don't even know if it's a rumor that in China, and in some other parts of the world, the content that the humans are absorbing there is different than the content that we're being fed.
Yeah.
Do you believe that to be true?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So then, but that's actually not what the U.S. government's worried about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Well, after all of those, whatever you want to call it, controversies, conversations started happening, you saw that on TikTok in the US, there was like a tab at the top of your For You page called STEM, like immediately to address that, the fact that people in the US weren't seeing enough
science
content. Yeah. So, I absolutely believe that that's happening though. And I think as a creator, I mean, I'm certainly not alone in this. I think any social media creator now who realizes that they have to exist across many platforms, like you can no longer be like a one platform creator. You have to diversify. I feel as though anyone who's on TikTok who lives in the US like grapples with this really difficult choice of like, do I participate or do I not participate? But if you don't participate, like there's still going to be hundreds of millions of other creators who are also existing on the ecosystem. So I struggle with that a lot. But I do think that everything that's going on with the US and TikTok right now is ultimately going to benefit the US and will help to hopefully create like a more equitable platform where like the US information is a little bit more protected than it has been.
Okay. I like that. That's a good, I do worry about the truth of the matter is the misinformation thing is really prevalent on all of the apps.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
And TikTok does get a huge, they get a big part of the wrath. But I think if we're really honest, it's like they all have the misinformation thing.
Yeah.
And that's going to be even more troublesome with AI. So you must be like all hopped up on the AI trend stuff because it's at the intersectionality of pop culture and business.
Yeah.
What's like, all right, I have a few-part question.
Okay.
What's your personal relationship with like AI and the future of AI, like on a personal level? And how do you think it's going to play into the whole like marketing game?
Yeah, I think this is such an exciting space. Yeah. So first answer to the first question, am I interested in AI? Absolutely. Do I use the AI that most of the people are using right now? Yes. I'm like, anytime I'm going to Google something, ChatGPT. Yes. Yeah. That is my go-to now. Yeah. And it's actually been really interesting because I've been having a lot of conversations with other creators recently about how to use specifically ChatGPT to help with content creation. Okay. And so I've been leaning on ChatGPT a lot more for like idea genesis and thinking about what I can simplify via automation, which is it's a little bit difficult because I also feel like as a creator, there's something that's so inherently creative and human about the process where you can't fully automate anything. I was actually talking to a creator who was like, oh, I'm going to have ChatGPT pretty much do all of my content and give me like full scripts. And I'm like, no. I think the second
that's going to show.
Yeah, exactly. Your engagement is going to fall down the toilet. You're going to have so many opportunities where you're going to see that the content is coming across as less human and like lacking that like sense of your personality. So that's one thing that I will do it more so for like, hey, I'm interested in talking about this topic. Can you give me a few different options of ways that I can present that information? And it almost just like helps with my ideas, but I will still come up with like how I work is I'll come up with like bullet points for
the original idea.
Yeah. And then that's what I'll talk to.
Yeah.
So that's that. And then I think for the second question of how AI will help with like marketing and social media, I think that what we're seeing now, and this is less ChatGPT, but more so like all of these apps that are coming out where they are creating, you essentially write in a prompt of like, show me a video of a girl walking down like a street in Tokyo.
Yes.
And having like rain falling down and like it'll just generate a video like that. That to me is wild. It's less of marketing, but I'm really excited to see how that impacts entertainment more broadly.
Yeah.
Like TV, movies, everything in that space. And then Gary Vaynerchuk, who's also like huge in marketing,
has Gary V.
Yeah, he's really bullish on, which is really scary, AI generated influencers.
Yeah. And he's like saying that's like the next thing. Prepare yourself.
Yeah. Which time will tell.
Yeah.
To me, that seems super dystopian and a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But you are seeing.
But also, like, and can I just say, there's actually an episode that I was going to tell you when you said, I was listening to a podcast on the way in, I was going to say, there's a specific episode I want you to listen to with Audie Metcalf. And we talk a little bit about AI. And she says, when I asked her this question, this was like a while back, she goes, you could be successful like using AI if you're comfortable with all of your content sounding like internet speak.
Yeah, totally.
And I was like, boof, like that hit me because if you think about really where it's pulling from, you're going to get a lot of internet speak. And the reason I bring this up is like, sure, there could probably be an AI generated influencer. If that influencer basically lives in internet speak, people might not even notice the difference. Yeah. But you'd also probably not have like depth of personality or depth of account. And by the way, that's okay too. There's a market for that. But I think it's going to be very hard to generate authenticity and like organic and like true depth of personality through AI. I don't know, maybe in later models. Right now, I think that's not going to happen.
Yeah. And I think that's what I feel too inherently. But I also, I've been amazed with how fast, how rapid AI has really been able to accomplish so many things. So I'm curious, like, could they give these like AI influencers like more unique personalities and like almost give them the pages of like influencers like yourself and be like, I want you.
Oh no. Yeah. You can't take mine.
You know, like I want you to take this influencer's style and way of speaking and connecting with their audience and take aspects of that, blend it with a few other influencers, and then
that's terrifying.
Bada bing, bada boom, you have a new AI influencer who seems more organic. But
and the best of all worlds.
I mean, never say never.
It's true. You're right. It is moving quickly, and I'm slightly terrified of it, but I'm also like, we can't control it. So I'm looking at it now with curiosity.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite, and you're very passionate about female-owned brands. Is outside of you being female, is there a reason for that?
Ooh, good question. I think so. I think one thing that really stuck with me from business school. So going to Berkeley, it's a very entrepreneurial, startup-centric place to be. Especially, I mean, you have Stanford there too. The whole Bay Area is very entrepreneurial. I remember hearing a statistic, and it's still the same statistic, but less than 2% of venture capital goes to women-led companies. And to me, that just seemed so disproportionately low. And yes, you can look at the number of women versus men who are starting companies, and there are arguments to kind of justify why that is the case. However, I felt really strongly, especially when I was starting to build my little matcha company, that there was just a lot of differences in the way that men were able to raise capital versus women. And you would see, especially in 2018, obviously very different macroeconomic times than we're in now, but you'd see these men who were able to essentially sell an idea of a product or of a company that didn't even exist yet. But it's like, yeah, me and my 3 buddies want to start this thing. And VC firms would be like, all right, here's $2 million to play around with that idea.
Yeah.
And that never happens to women. No. So I just thought, if there's any way that I can help shed light to women-founded businesses, to just help them in any way that I can, I'm going to try and do that. So that's where it really stems from for me.
I love that.
And I just think, like, other than that, I really find myself to be like a advocate for women. I'm a girl's girl, and I think I really connect with women. Not to say I don't connect with men as well, but I think I've just met so many women founders that have inspired me, that have made me really optimistic about the world and excited. And I just want to be there to support them and like help them grow. So a lot of what I'll do on my social media pages is take a female founded company and just do a highlight on them. And I'm not getting paid for that. I just want people to know about it. If it goes viral, great. If people now like at least know of the company and buy those products, awesome. But nothing is in it for me other than to just spread the word.
Yeah. I really love that. I knew there was going to be a deeper reason. Like, it's not just because she's a girl. There's a deeper reason. Yeah. But I do like that that's highlighted. I know like women we are getting our time in the sun, you know? I think for many years we had a hard time, and I do think there's still somewhat of an inequality. But I think what we're seeing, like what I'm looking at the stats out there right now for like women graduating, female entrepreneur, the numbers are like climbing fast.
Yeah.
I think if we were having this conversation in 5 years from now, it would be like a vastly different landscape for women.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I talk about too, because I've realized that exactly what you're talking about with how the landscape is shifting. Yeah. I want to highlight that and almost like put like kerosene on that and have more people know, because you're right. More women are graduating from universities than men. Yep. You have women working at record levels than
I just
ever
saw
before.
That article.
Yep.
But I had a thought about that. And hold on to what we were just saying, because like, I do want to run with that. But I have this. I was thinking about that stat, like more women in the workplace than ever before. Yeah. And I wondered if that was also because At first I was like, yes, hooray. And then I stopped and thought, is that also because life is so expensive that women have no choice?
Yeah.
And the choice is being taken away from women, whether they want to stay home or go to work. And I was like thinking about that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there are a bunch of factors at play. I think one of them are, as we just mentioned, women are graduating from universities. They're more educated than ever, and they genuinely want to work and they have the skill sets to be able to work. That's number one. Number two, the pandemic created this opportunity for more remote work than possible. When women have children, they want the flexibility. They want to be able to work from home at least some degree or have like a hybrid work environment. So that's another. So there's more opportunities for women who want that kind of hybrid role. And then I think, the last piece is just the cost of living has gotten out of control. And especially when you look at like the US and the coast, just in order to live here, you need a dual income household, and especially if you have children. So I think those three to me seem like the biggest drivers of that. And ironically, I think if you were reading that article too, men are also working at the lowest.
No, that tracks.
So then, I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but
that tracks. Why are men working at the lowest they've ever worked?
I actually do not know the answer to that. And
I think I'm already such a, like, people think it's a raging feminist. I can't even go there. But I mean, back to the original thing, women are, seems like, on the trajectory to like highly outperform men in nearly every category. I mean, this is not my opinion. This is just seemingly fact, right?
I mean, that's what I believe.
Yeah. And it's so wild. I mean, I really do hope actually the men can catch up, because we don't want a huge, imbalance. That won't be good for anybody.
Yeah.
But so you're trying to pour kerosene like on the fire to get that rolling, like that people know that that's happening and highlight it.
Exactly. So women get the credit we deserve.
Yeah. How was like the MBA program and all, like, and even just when you were starting out with entrepreneurship, how was it like dealing with like the male dominated industries versus female dominated industries? Like, do they play nicely together? Like, what was your experience? Like, did people take you seriously?
So this is a really interesting area. And I think by starting the matcha company, I learned so much about myself, about business, about fundraising, about just like even the CPG industry, right? So I was essentially creating a product that I was selling to businesses. That was the model. I learned in that process, and I was so naive going into it. I was like, oh, I have a business. I can raise money. Great.
Right.
And then you learn it's not that simple. It's really dependent on the type of product that you're building. And a lot of people in the consumer packaged goods space will oftentimes they'll bootstrap. They'll put their own money into a business. They'll raise a friends and family round. And I think I went in naive thinking like, oh, I can raise money from venture capitalists. Like, no, that's not, no, sweetie, that's not usually how this works.
Okay, but it's a beautiful thing to have that ambition and to like, imagine we knew everything we knew when we started out. Nobody would start.
Yes.
So we need that.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I probably would not have started it had I known what I know now.
So what were you coming across?
So in school, there were just a bunch of startup pitch competitions, and I was part of this accelerator program for startups. And I think what I learned in that process, and this is something that I think I know now, but I didn't know at the time, was that really, like, if you're going to raise capital from a venture capitalist, even from like an angel network, you have to look at the type of company that you're building and whether or not that type of company makes sense to get outside capital to grow. And so for consumer packaged goods company, it's number one, it's a lot harder to grow that business very quickly because it's super capital intensive. You're putting money into a product to create it, and then you get the revenue after you've already put in the product to put in the money to create the product.
So it's a long cycle too.
Exactly.
I mean, I guess they're all long cycles.
Yeah, but like if you're a tech founder and you're creating a software as a service business, and you and two buddies are going to crank out code, build this software, sell it to other businesses, you can pretty much scale because you're building essentially one software, and that one piece of software can then be sold infinitely, essentially. So you're able to grow a company a lot faster. a lot of these, especially if you get an enterprise customer, you're able to get a ton of money right away without that outlay of capital at the beginning. So it just makes a lot more sense for certain types of companies to raise venture capital. And so I honestly didn't fully understand that when I started, which makes me sound so naive, but it's true.
But isn't the point that you're supposed to learn along the way?
Yeah,
I think
totally.
it's normal to not, like, who knows everything when they start out?
Yeah.
So, but I wonder what it's like for like a young, attractive woman to start out and pitch an idea versus like a young man. I just wonder what that experience is like.
I think, well, from everything that I've seen, I think I take the product first, or the company that is being pitched. Like, I think that is ultimately the most important thing.
Yeah.
I think like what you are building matters, number one.
Yep.
I think below the surface, that's where the gender dynamics come into play a little bit more, where I think just statistically, because most of the people in the venture capital world are men, to no one's surprise.
Yep.
It's almost like this confirmation bias, and there's a lot of research and a lot of, papers and studies that have gone into this, but because a lot of VCs are men, they tend to want to invest in people who look and sound and are like them. So I think I can only speak from my experience, but I also know just the nature of consumer packaged goods. A lot more women start those types of businesses versus men. So I think for me, I can understand why men have gotten a little bit more capital, for sure. But I think there's no doubt gender does play a role in it. It's just a question of how much.
Yeah. It's so interesting about the consumer packaged goods. I'm just thinking about that. And I wonder if that's just because also like women, we grow up more like exposed to like buying things. Totally. So we're more inclined to be making things.
Oh yeah. I mean, women have the majority of the purchasing decision in like American households. And I would imagine globally as well. And I think women are, for whatever reason, more drawn to like tangible goods. And I think a lot of it too, not to stereotype, but women that are interested in fashion, in beauty, right? These are all things that you can touch.
Oh, I
and
love
hold.
a tangible good. You won't hear any defensiveness here. I'm like, I love a tangible good. If I can touch it, I want it. I want to feel it. And specifically if they're like shiny and things. Like, I'm not evolved in that way.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Wow. And what do you think, like in your opinion, what makes great freaking marketing?
Ooh. I think great marketing to me is a little surprising and a little bit like it catches you off guard a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that to me takes a great piece of marketing and separates it from just good or okay marketing.
Okay.
And I think what you see now is, you can have probably like a full TED talk on like what makes great marketing, but I think for me, the more recent pieces of like content or collaborations that I've seen are able to capitalize on this like sense of, oh, I don't think consumers are expecting this, but I'm going to put this out there in like this really refreshing way and catch people off guard so it's noteworthy and they share it, they like it, they comment.
That's such a good distinction, like a little surprise. Because like I do feel like if I have to watch one more like slow panning aesthetic video of some sort of like coffee or a golden hour or you know what I mean, like I feel like I'm watching the same video basically repeated through so many different brands.
Oh my God, yeah.
And they all did it. And I'm talking even big brands that you would think like they must have huge marketing budgets. I'm seeing the same videos.
Yeah.
That surprise element really is a thing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Can you like name any brands that you could think of off the top of your head that are just killing the game as far as like their marketing and branding? And it could be either. I know those are actually two very different things.
Yeah.
Marketing and branding are very different.
Yeah. I think okay, let me think about this.
I know I didn't prepare you for this one.
Yeah. Well, I know we've been talking a lot about social media, so I'll stick to like branding, marketing, and social media. And this is a company that has gotten a lot of a lot of press already for what they do online, but Duolingo has always amazed me. They're the language learning app.
Yes.
And specifically on TikTok, they have this brand, I don't even know how to call it. They have like their mascot, which is this like bird.
Okay.
And they have this like bird who has this like really out there personality, which is like the opposite of what you'd expect. So like goes back to what I said around like great marketing kind of surprises you a little bit. And it's brash, it's bold, it's sometimes obnoxious, but it's this really
Is it like could it be offensive?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And they've gotten in trouble. Yeah. They've gotten in trouble before for it. It's hilarious.
You have to be careful, but I love that though.
Yeah.
We're getting in trouble for.
Yeah. And like also, I think you've had a lot of brands that have kind of taken out of Duolingo's book.
Yeah.
And I believe they were the first to really go in this way. But then you also see the same, right, for like company Twitter/X, whatever we're calling it, accounts where like they have been known to be like really out there and like tweet directly at their customers and say outrageous things. Like that type of content has like virality baked into it because it's not what you're expecting. It's really designed to create conversations.
Yes. I guess it really is so hard to stand out now in the content is so saturated. Mm-hmm. It's damn near impossible. And that's why I think a lot of influencers and just social media personas are doing more and more outrageous things and having to say more and more outrageous things. I think that's also why we're seeing so many outrageous things being said, because it's like some people don't even mean what they're saying. They're just trying to get traction.
Oh, totally.
And right, it's like the clickbait. But
yeah,
I guess that is the distinction between how do you capture people's attentions without having to say obnoxious things and or do clickbait, but really, and that is, I think this comes back to this element of surprise.
Yeah. And you see like any TikTok or Reel 101 will tell you what do you need to do in order to have a video stand out or like get engagement, and it's create a really great hook. Yeah. And that hook is just that first few seconds and you're doing something to catch attention. And I think the whole catching attention thing is what makes or breaks whether or not something is able to like get eyes on it. And so I agree with you. I think we're living in this era where it's almost like everyone is trying to one-up each other on how they can stand out. And it gets to a point where sometimes when I'm scrolling on my feed on TikTok, it's like everything just seems to be
radical.
Yes.
That's why my spirit won't let me go.
Yeah.
No, but it's problematic because I think it's like The Boy Who Cried Wolf. I think we're seeing so much like mass hysteria that's like even I feel like the young people have to come on and be so dramatic about everything because that they're watching that happening. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like I feel like collectively as a whole, as like a generation, we need permission to be like, it's actually okay, even if you wanted to show up online and just be yourself.
Yeah,
that's okay too. And the people that are interested in that will find you. You don't have to be everybody's person.
Totally.
I'm like allergic to the hook, and in my own content, like I refuse to do that. I think I like this little life. Like I can't. If it's
the number of times I've heard that, and then you know you've heard it too much when you start like singing it to yourself.
Like problematically, I was singing it to myself, and I was like, I'm seeing it too much. And then I was like, why am I seeing it too much? Oh, everybody's using it. Why is everyone using it? Because it's gone viral, and you've been told that if you use that song, your video will perform better. Yeah. So people have stopped choosing music and songs that are impactful to them or that they love or that maybe even might be better suited for the content that they're making because they've been told that the reward system is so great for the mediocrity and the copying.
Totally. And I think what we may end up seeing is as we continue this like virtuous cycle of content that is existing just to be eye-catching, I would imagine that the people who are not playing that game will ironically end up standing out more. And I think that's why when I first came across your content, I was like, wow, this person
really doesn't care.
No, but it's clear you're not doing the like viral 3-second music hooks at the start of your video, and you're not trying to play the algorithm. You're like, hey, this is me. I'm showing up authentically online, and I'm going to just give you my personality as it is, and it's real. And I think that's really refreshing, and yet again, another testament to why you've been able to build a really committed community who feel like they know you. Because there's a certain point, if you're just always playing into the trends, your followers aren't going to know who you are.
That's why I'm worried about the AI models.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're just going to be basically pulling from all the things that are performing well, which will be trends.
Yeah.
But I so agree with you. But I think, I think we have a similarity in that I have this real passion about bringing women like elevated content that's, I don't want to like talk in a weird way. I notice a lot of influencers talking like have an interesting way of speaking.
Yeah.
It almost feels a little bit dumbed down, which I think also like there's this, I can't even do, there's, this influencer talk like way of speaking. But I really am committed to like, I want to bring high level content to women because the same reason that I said to you in the beginning, women are fed so much kind of like low level shallow content because I think the world is still catching up to like where we're at, and they think like women are interested in this. But I believe, and even if it is the minority, I'm going to speak to them right now. I believe that women want to be spoken to in like a super high level way. I believe that women want to hear about like business and like what's going on in the business world by a woman who cares and is passionate. Like, I think that.
I do too. And I think I also fell into that trap of thinking that I needed to put out content that was dumbed down. I probably did that for the first year and a half of me being online on TikTok. I've been on Instagram now for, my social channel page for 1 year.
Oh, okay.
And it was only when I started my Instagram was when I started playing around with like, all right, I'm not going to do the lowest level content, but I'm going to do content that to me seems like a little bit more elevated and just see if it sticks.
Yeah.
And it did. And I was so surprised by that. And I was like,
so happy.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, okay, people actually want to hear about like a deep dive on business and go into like how a company is like driving revenue. And I was afraid to do that before.
Yeah, I could totally see why. And that's like, and so I'm like, I'm allergic to that. I'm like, I think we have to, even if it's a slower start. I mean, you start on TikTok and TikTok's a bit of a faster start, but I think it's a slower start on all platforms. I don't care which one it is. If you're doing more high level content, it just is. It's less of a, but I still think that like, people are catching up and the audiences are there. And I think that's like the better content.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because I think also you have to know who your audience is. I think and just even looking at like my analytics, I'm like a data driven person. So like every month or so, I'll just do like a deep dive of like, where are my followers coming from? Like, what are their ages? And I just think like, and I think probably a lot of influencers are like this, where their demographic of people who follows them. Actually, maybe this isn't the case. It is for me. But like a lot of the people who follow me are around my age bracket. They're mostly US based, mostly on the coast. So it's like,
same.
I kind of feel
a similar thing.
Yeah. I kind of feel, and like literally like 85% women. So I'm like, all right, I got my audience down.
Same. Okay. I have like 9.1% men. People like, hey guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up today.
But it's like, okay, I then am able to think like, okay, my followers are pretty much like me. And so I'm just going to put out content that I want to do and I'm interested in. And if people aren't interested in, you don't need to listen.
Yeah. And probably content that you would be interested in absorbing. Like when I came across your page, I don't even know how I did explore. When I saw it and you were like, hi, I'm Sammi at the intersection of business and pop culture. And I went, because I was like, yes, I love that.
Yeah.
And then when I started listening, I was like, oh, I want this daily. I want to hear this kind of stuff daily. I was like, subscribe. I subscribed immediately. And I was like, like I see a lot of stuff come across my Explore page. Very little of it is about like business news and marketing related stuff. And I'm in that business really.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was interesting. Any like brand, female owned that like stands out to you as just like really like has like a unique story or interesting like journey that maybe we would know of? That's kind of, I know like we have Spanx. That was like a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
I feel like there's got to be more stories of women like that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there are so many. So I used to, when I started, so I think I told you I started with like very pop culture centric. And then I'd say I did about a year of just highlighting female founders. And they were like the Sarah Blakeleys of the world from Spanx. There was, I guess Tracy Romulus did fall into that category.
She does.
Yeah. But I did a bunch of these. I think, let me have a think on it. I'd say, actually, if I can do a plug for someone who I spoke to more recently, she's not a public figure per se, but actually it's someone that I went to business school with, and she launched a company called Sequin, and it's a debit card specifically for women, and that's how she's positioning it. And what's really cool about the debit card is there are specific like kickbacks to like businesses that women have shown to really enjoy. So like there are Soul Cycles on there. There are like all of these different companies. Yeah. There are all these different companies that are kind of teaming up with the card. And I think just the mission of the company is really interesting. It's about like empowering women. I think their whole byline is like giving women the credit they deserve.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, I think I'm really passionate. I think because I focus on business, on women that are leveling the playing field, or perhaps however you want to phrase it, just giving more attention to women in like the financial and money sphere. So anyone who's in that space, I'm really passionate about. There are specific influencers that are crushing it. There's her first 100K. She has a podcast called Financial Feminist. I think she's fantastic and has helped millions of people. Cody Sanchez, who I'm really inspired by, her platform, she actually buys and sells businesses, but she has a super successful page, I think over 1 million followers at this point, where she talks about business, about a little bit of marketing, but she's like 1,000 steps ahead of me, and I really look up to her.
Cody Sanchez, and does she what's the name of her? Or is it just Cody Sanchez?
Cody Sanchez.
Oh,
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She is really amazing. And then I'd say other people in the space that I come across, I think Your Rich BFF is another one.
Yeah, I know about that one.
She's like exploded in the last few years. And I'm really inspired by anyone who lives in that space of like women and giving more education around money, because I think that's this next frontier that we've already talked about, women in business, and there have been a lot of I believe like podcasts and a lot of education around women in business, but I think money specifically on its own is like been a really male dominated industry.
Yep.
And I think now that women are in these positions of working more, of literally like being equal to men in the household.
If not the breadwinners.
If not the breadwinner.
I have multiple friends who are the breadwinners of their family.
Yeah. And I just think now we're in this really cool phase where women are taking ownership of their money and like how to invest it and how to like build wealth for themselves that doesn't depend on their husbands. So I think that's like a next phase where I don't know exactly how I'll do it, but I want to incorporate more of that into my content somehow, because I just think it's so inspiring.
I love that. And I think it will be welcome and just such a need. And that's really, really cool. What was your dynamic like growing up? Do you come from a family of like female entrepreneurs? Was your mom like, what did your mom do?
So my mom was actually she worked a little bit, but primarily was a stay-at-home mom. Yeah. My dad was the entrepreneur.
Okay.
And he worked in industries across finance. He, at one point, his background is electrical engineering. So he's an engineer by trade, went into finance. At one point, like ended up buying a satellite company in Dallas, Texas. And then and now he does like home building.
But talk about the ultimate pivot, like being an electrical engineer and then get like, you really can take your, background anywhere, like if you want to.
Yeah. Yes. He is without a doubt my role model in business, and talk about like my number one hype person.
Oh my, I love that.
Yeah. He has a motto whenever I talk to him. It's like the first thing he says whenever I talk to him on the phone. He goes, "Today is the best day of my life." And he's just like truly the most special person.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they like your mom was like stayed at home. I'm like, they walked so we could run.
No, literally.
Because,
Yeah.
And that's why that stat really kind of, when I saw that stat about more women working, I was like, I really hope it's because they want to. I really want to be hopeful, because I do think that it's still a beautiful thing for the moms that choose to stay home and want to focus on their kids, so that you have this comfort, safety, warm, delicious nest to decide what you want to do next. The best jumping off point is like one where you really feel like I could do anything I want to.
Totally.
And I think that really comes from like a house where like your mom's fully present, really focused on family, like it's tough.
It's a conversation that I'm having a ton with my friends right now. I'm 31.
Yeah.
I just got married in January. A lot of my friends have gotten married over the last few years, are starting to think about kids. And it's something I think about almost every day of like, what do I want my situation to be when I bring children into the world? I look back to my upbringing where I had a mother who was super present, who would drop me off at the school bus, pick me up every single day. A father who was the person who went to work, commuted into New York City every day. And I had this upbringing where I always felt supported because I had one very present parent who was around all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something where women are put into this more difficult situation, because especially in light of everything that we're talking about with women working more than ever, and women also just systemically having more of the household duties and chores to take care of.
Yeah.
And childcare. It's really tough. And then childcare on its own is so incredibly expensive, especially in LA.
Yep.
I was floored when my friends were telling me about the cost of even preschool in Los Angeles.
It's like I've been having talks with my little sister's like doing her 5-year plan, and like, God willing, there'll be children. And she like talks to me. She's like, and I'm going to need this. I'm going to need that. And I'm like, how much do you think that costs? And like, I don't think she has any clue.
Yeah.
But bless her, she doesn't have to worry about it right now. But I'm like, she doesn't even know. But you're finding out.
I'm finding out, and my jaw is on the floor. So I think, and then there are all of these cases, right, where if let's say you are in a job where you're making decent money, when you actually think about how much childcare costs, a lot of people have actually, and I've had conversations like this with my friends, they're like, you know what, the delta or the difference between what I make and what I'd have to pay out in childcare
for someone else to raise my child in a way that I wouldn't even raise them.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's something that I think is fascinating. I think one thing that I've tried to do, I need to do a much better job at it. And that's why I'm also just in awe of everything that you do and how you show up online so authentically, is I'm trying to also explore this space where I talk a lot about business and marketing, and I present like almost this like person who's like, hey, I read everything and now I'm going to present you with this information, so now you don't have to like read the article that I did. That's kind of like the role that I take on.
Yeah.
But I'm now trying to see how I can fold in these other elements of things that I feel really passionate about and conversations that I'm having in my personal life that I believe would be helpful for other people to be thinking about, talking about, or just have transparency around. And I think that's where I know LA and New York is the same. The coast of the US are all probably quite similar, but I think just the costs of raising children is something that you kind of go from this place of 0 to 1 of like, you're not interested of having kids, and all of a sudden you are.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe you get pregnant and then you're trying to figure it out as you're like racing 9 months to deliver a child. And it's like, it hits you in the face. I think there should be more transparency around like, hey, these are the basic costs of childcare in your city or state.
Yeah.
This is what, like, even just like the basics of like, hey, basic after school activities. Like, this is how much you should budget if you want to have children.
It's interesting. Like, I actually don't know anyone who really breaks it down in a very honest way on an ongoing basis, like how much children cost. like, and really like it's all encompassing, like really what's included in. And especially I think it would be maybe we're getting back to the, like, if we knew what we knew when we started our business, we would never do it. I'm like, maybe we shouldn't tell people. Well, maybe just let them find out.
So I did one video on, it was both on Instagram and TikTok. And I said, is there a financial number that you have in mind before you have kids?
Yeah.
And to no one's surprise, it was a video that got like almost more comments than like any other video.
Yeah.
And people came out of the woodwork of like, I went in blind, or, oh, I had a rough idea, but that number was really off.
Yep.
And coming out of that, actually one of like the biggest questions that I had for myself and the world was like, if the role of childcare fell on men more than it did women, I mean, this is not the case, I'm saying if, hypothetically, would this type of financial information be more readily available and more transparent with the world? I think so.
I'll take it one step further. If men were responsible for taking care of the children, like the general caregiving, I don't think we would have a childcare crisis. I think they would have fixed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you can say the same, right? For like all of these like diseases that impact women or fertility.
PCOS.
Yes. Huge. Birth control.
There's no information on PCOS.
Yeah.
And I actually know so many women struggling with it because it's just, there's very little research, very little funding.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, that's so interesting that we, you know, it's true. Like the women diseases, the female diseases really don't get as much airtime.
Totally.
But AI will fix that. Did you just see that recent thing yesterday? Was it 2 days ago that now, like, there was a huge medical breakthrough with AI in like in the medical space where like it could basically, I think with a certain kind of blood test or a certain kind of test, could figure out exactly what molecules are about to turn cancerous or turn like Alzheimer's, and it could detect it and also give you the formula, whether it be through chemo, through medication, like how to compound a medication to stop it dead in its tracks. This was yesterday.
Wow.
So that's where we love AI.
I mean, that's incredible.
I know.
That's
so like
why
AI
we should be
we need to put it on the female issues.
Yes.
AI, check out some female issues for us.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So where are you in your journey with like deciding what you want to do with a family? I had heard that in big tech, and you could tell me if this is wrong or right, I'd heard in big tech that there's like a huge push to sort of like fund and help women sort of freeze their eggs, and they pay for it.
Yes.
Because they're kind of like, hey, put this on ice.
You can work like 5 more years.
So you can work aggressively with no life.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you only really start to really create healthy boundaries about work life when you have children, I think. Otherwise, if you're like, whatever. Before I had kids, I'm like, I'll work whenever. I don't care.
Yeah.
I have no life.
Totally.
But when you have children, so they know that.
Of course.
So so is that true? And then what's your journey?
Yes, I think that's definitely true. I think the largest tech companies, at least in the US, most of them cover in various amounts certain levels of, or certain rounds, I'll say, of IVF, of egg freezing, of all types of fertility treatments.
Okay.
So my company works with a company called Progeny, which is like a fertility insurance company, and they essentially cover 2 rounds of IVF. And so when I got married in January, my whole mentality was my husband and I were not rushing to have kids, but I have this incredible benefit. Why not use it?
Yeah.
So I went through the process. I did an egg freeze round that it was technically IVF, but it's frozen. It's on ice now. I did that round in February. And it was such an empowering process.
Interesting.
Being able to go through it. Yeah. I felt the entire time, obviously you're hormonal. You're like, ugh, I have to give myself shots every day. That's not great. But I felt so thankful that I was able to go through this process when there are millions of women in the world who cannot.
Yeah.
And that's for financial reasons. That's for health reasons.
Yeah. Or they didn't do it at the time, right? Like you're doing it at a prime time.
Yes. Yes. And what's interesting, and however you want to think about it, maybe it was meant to be this way. I had never done any kind of fertility testing when I was in my 20s. It just never crossed my mind.
Yeah. Well,
never.
Let me just tell you, if you're 20, you're fine.
Yeah. Okay.
You're fertile.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But like, I just, for whatever reason, I was now that I'm in my 30s, I just think like, no doctor, no general doctor that I ever went to ever asked me like, hey, have you gotten your AMH tested? Have you gotten like the basic fertility levels checked? And it wasn't until I was like, you know what? I have an IVF benefit. I'm going to use it. Let's get like the baseline levels checked out. And when I went through that process, I found out that I have very low AMH for my age. And they didn't really know why. They thought it may have been endometriosis. It turns out it wasn't. And it started this deep dive of like what it could be. And I went through the IVF process. They ended up just ruling it as like diminished ovarian reserve, which impacts millions of women, where it's kind of this unexplained lower level of eggs for your age, and could be genetic, could be some other underlying issue, but
well, they're saying environmental, you know.
Yeah, and it could be environmental. Who knows? But I had no idea that I fell into that camp until I went for my baseline test, and then I was like, oh, well, actually, thank goodness that I'm doing this now instead of waiting a few years and then not being able to do this IVF thing.
That's actually a huge result.
Yeah. And I'm so thankful for that. And I'm starting IVF round 2 on Monday.
Oh my God, right back to it.
I know. Boom. Get those eggs ready.
Yeah.
So
and then do you think you'll be able to really put it out of your mind? Like, are you going to put it out of your mind? Like, all right, it's, or like, are you going to put it out of your mind?
I think, you know, they always say that as a woman, you are thinking about the biological clock before you have kids, and probably even when you have kids, because you're like, if I want more, all of that. No, I don't think it ever goes away until you have your children and you're like, this is done. I have all the ones that I want.
Yeah.
But I think I will have a sense of peace knowing that I have gone through IVF. I have luckily a few embryos, and that's my backup situation. So I think that gives me an enormous sense of peace. But I still think I have tremendous anxiety around having kids. And I don't think I will ever be one of those people that's like, I am ready 100%. Like, let's go. I want the babies. Like, no, I'm going to be terrified.
Yeah. I wasn't either. That's why I did it at 19, because I was like, I don't have to think about it at all.
19.
I was 19.
You were a baby.
I was a child. But you really don't, at 19, you don't know what you don't know.
Wow. Oh,
and that's the best way to go into it.
That's a blessing.
The best way. But I really feel you. And that's a beautiful blessing. You know, it's funny. When I asked the question, I was like feeling all negative at like big tech. I'm like, ugh, look at you, like bribing women, you know, to put their eggs on ice. But actually, like, you ended up finding out something so important about yourself. And you always have this fallback. Like, you always have this little safety net.
Yeah. I actually think, just given my experience, a lot of people in my network who are at my company, who work for similar companies, are going through egg freezing and IVF. And I think that just given, first, I believe it's 1 in 8 women in the U.S. struggle with infertility.
Yeah.
It's much higher than I thought.
And climbing.
Yeah, and climbing. And women are putting off having kids because they're working more. Like, it's this whole cycle that feeds into itself. And obviously, as you get older, it gets harder to have kids. I can see a world in which there will be more of a norm when you get to your late 20s to do an egg freezing process, because every single year the prices are dropping significantly. I don't know, and I doubt it will ever be cheap, because U.S. healthcare has its own issues.
Right, unless we give it over to AI.
Yeah. Yes. So I think that this will be something that becomes more of a norm. Right now, it's very much not a norm. It's for the privileged people who have health care and who can have their companies pay for it.
You're my 3rd podcast guest to have frozen their eggs and come on and talked about it.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to feel like it's not that. It's not even more than 1 in 8.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's now feels like everybody I'm talking to.
Yeah. And you go into these fertility centers, especially in LA, and it is like the most pop-in club you've ever been to. Like, like appointments at 6:30 in the morning, doesn't matter. There will be like 10 people there in the waiting room, like just waiting along with you. I mean, if there's ever a business line to go into, It's a fertility clinic.
You heard it here first,
Yes.
folks. Oh my God,
Yes.
wow. Okay, well, good. I'm excited for you. I think you're going to make a fantastic mom. So
Oh my
I
gosh.
think
Well-
I'm excited for that journey whenever you decide.
Yes.
As a quick wind down, I was wondering if you want to do like a rapid fire.
Okay.
5 do's and don'ts of
Okay.
great marketing.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, can we start the clock? All right, ready? 5 do's, 5 don'ts, rapid fire with Samantha Cohen about marketing do's and don'ts.
Okay.
Good ones.
Okay. Good ones. Know where your customer is. Always put whatever marketing you're working on, find your customer and put it there. Don't go on channels that you know your customer isn't at. Authenticity. I know I've said that a trillion times today, but be authentic. If your brand has a certain ethos, a certain style, a certain way of connecting with your customers, make sure that you're presenting that in whatever advertising or marketing that you're working on.
Okay.
Number 3, I'd say this is also something that I said earlier, but you have to be going to your customers in a way that they don't expect. You have to do something surprising. You have to be out of the normal mold of what they're used to seeing, or else they're going to keep scrolling. I think that's a really big one. Number 4, I'd say when it comes to partnerships or collaborations, obviously these are huge in marketing nowadays. Make sure that you're going to people or companies or whoever you're collaborating with in a synergistic way and where it makes sense. I've seen a few collaborations recently where you just kind of question like what the synergy is or like
how do they find each other?
Yeah, how it makes sense.
Maybe I'm guilty of that. No. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then I'd say the last one is I personally love when brands are vulnerable. And I think this is something that is riskier, but it kind of feeds into a lot of what we've been talking about with where social media is going. I think that the brands that are willing to say when they've made a mistake, to actually like call themselves out on things that they've done, not to even say that you've done something negative, but just to like own stuff.
Yeah.
And I think
I love these 5.
Oh, thanks.
These are really good.
Thanks.
The vulnerability aspect. Oh, there was a question that we didn't get to. I want to ask you when we do the 5 don't. Wait, we just did the do's.
Yeah.
5 don'ts.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about storytelling and how it pertains to and how important it is with marketing, like in your opinion.
Ooh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so 5.
Okay, these are going to be tougher.
nots,
And
don'ts.
I didn't think about this before, so this is going to be
If you
harder
get
for me.
stuck, maybe I'll chime in.
Okay, yeah. Yes. And I'm trying to think of 5 don'ts that aren't the opposites of the do's that are unique.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd say number 1, don't go to your customer with an ask per se. I think I've seen brands that have like really aggressive call to actions of like, you know, shop this, do this. And it's like, I'm the type of shopper when I'm seeing something, I don't want to be like propositioned like that. Like I want to feel like I'm taking something in my own volition.
It's like when you go into the store and they follow you around. I'm like, what are you doing right now? Just let me have my moment.
Yeah, exactly. So that's number 1. I'd say don't limit yourself in terms of like how you show up online. I think there are a lot of brands that kind of present a too polished version of themselves. And like one thing that you'll see popping up, it's already like huge and one of the biggest ways that brands market themselves, but user generated content is really lands a lot better because people want to hear something being sold to them through a person versus like the spokesperson.
It's popping right now, user generated content. That's what all the brands want.
Yep. Okay. So that's
a great one.
Thanks. I'd say number 3 is don't be afraid to have from a brand. Like I'm really bullish on all brands, and I'm realizing as I'm saying these don'ts, these could easily be spun into do's, but just work with me here. Don't be afraid as a brand to limit yourself to just the like 3 main social media platforms of Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Yeah.
I would actually say like if I am a diehard customer for a brand, I want to consume them in other channels too. So like have a brand newsletter where it's not necessarily you selling a product, but it's like you keeping your customers updated on the space. I think that's really interesting. And I wish more brands did that because I feel like that's a really interesting way to stand out.
Yeah.
Also, don't be afraid to get experiential. I think that's where, especially in such a digital native world that we live in, like doing in-person pop-up events, especially ones
I
that
love that, like that human connect.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a CPG company. It doesn't need to be like a tequila company doing like a late night pop-up. Like it can be even just like a
hang, like a daytime sort of. Yes, I agree.
But you can also have like a software company that does a really interesting pop-up if you frame it the right way and it gets people together and you have a panel talking about the industry. Like you can do things that are more interesting.
Yes.
And then last but not least, I don't know, do you have any good ones?
I was good. One of my don'ts is like, I think I like to see like a little variety. I feel like when brands are so like monotone, it's like one singular thing all the time. I'm like, I'm bored. You know, I need a little bit of versatility. So any way that you could bring in kind of, even if you're a brand that does one thing, but like kind of what you said, like don't be afraid to do something, a touch point that doesn't necessarily have to be exactly what you do, just so that there's a little bit of variety, because it's the spice of life. And I think when it's just the same thing again and again, like just say like a pair of shoes, let's say, like I think people get bored.
Oh, totally. And I think that's where I really enjoy seeing brands that will feature items, products, services that aren't exactly what they're known for. I did a video on a company called Brightland, and this is like super niche. It's like an olive oil. Yeah, olive oil, female founded. And their Instagram page is incredible. Like you would expect like, okay, olive oil, how many ways can you position olive oil? And they have like the olive oil like dripping on the pizza. They have like it like very aesthetic with like beautiful flowers behind it. But one of the things that I loved is they were able to incorporate other things that kind of tangentially made sense, like a cute little nail with like an olive drawn on. Like they were able to like incorporate things.
But that's like, so you keep it so interesting. Then their feed is interesting to follow and you want to engage. If it was literally olive oil every time, you'd be like snooze. You'd hit snooze.
Yes.
So thank you for that. That was very good.
Yes.
Last question before we say goodbye.
Okay.
How important is like leveraging storytelling in marketing?
The most important thing.
Yeah.
I think that for a brand, a product, whatever you are selling, or maybe not selling, but sharing with the world, I think that people still want to connect to something with a greater meaning or a story behind it, because I still believe, like, I'm a humans first person, even though we're talking about AI and a lot of scientific developments. I believe that human connection is the most powerful way to introduce or sell anything. I believe that by putting something out there, by having like, especially vulnerability, and obviously vulnerability and storytelling are to some degree intertwined.
Of course.
But I think just
if you're telling a good story.
If you're telling a good story, yes. But I just think that that sense of human connection is what takes something from like, oh, thank you for telling me that. Like, I appreciate you transmitting that information to me, to, wow, now I want to learn more. I want to participate in this. I have an emotional connection. So I'm that much more bought in.
Yes.
So I think that for me, storytelling is intrinsic in great marketing, in branding, in like getting people to truly be bought in.
That's a perfect place to end. Thank you so much for today. I loved this conversation so much. Maybe this is what I think I'm realizing that this is what I really needed in my life, this intersectionality.
Anytime.
I really loved our conversation. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you for having me. So much fun.